The image was so wrong, it broke the rhythm of the road. Derek "Stitch" Morrison had been riding for 3 hours, the cold November air on I-80 in Wyoming, a familiar, biting companion. The rumble of his Harley-Davidson Road Glide was a steady heartbeat against the vast, empty landscape. Then he saw it. A small figure on the shoulder, walking against traffic. A child. Cars and semi-trucks were swerving into the left lane to give her a wide berth, their horns blaring a brief angry protest before they sped on, disappearing into the gray horizon. But nobody was stopping. Stitch's mind, honed by 25 years as a paramedic, started cataloging the impossibilities. No stopped car. No adult. Just a little girl in a thin pink coat, her dark hair whipped across her face by the wind. And then he saw the detail that sent a spike of ice through his veins, colder than the 28-degree air. She was barefoot. Her tiny feet were stark white against the frozen black asphalt of the shoulder. His decision wasn't a decision at all. It was an instinct. He signaled, his gloved hand a sharp, decisive movement, and expertly guided the heavy bike onto the shoulder, pulling up about 50 feet ahead of her. He killed the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening, filled only by the howl of the wind and the distant roar of passing trucks. He swung his leg over, his boots crunching on the gravel. He didn't run at her, knowing it might scare her. He walked slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible. She stopped walking when his bike pulled over. She just stood there, a fragile statue against the immense, uncaring landscape. As he approached, she didn't flinch or run. Instead, she took one deliberate step towards him. It wasn't a step of approach, but a gesture of surrender, a final, desperate plea. Her eyes, huge and dark in her pale face, locked onto his. They weren't crying. They were beyond tears, filled with a terrifying adult emptiness. Why is she barefoot in winter? The question screamed in his head. He was Derek Morrison, 52 years old, retired from a career of sirens and trauma. They called him Stitch, not because he was a tailor, but because for 2.5 decades he'd been the one putting people back together on the worst days of their lives. He was the road captain for the Iron Sentinels MC, a club of veterans, first responders, and tradesmen. He had seen the absolute depths of human suffering and the heights of resilience. He knew the look of shock. He knew the signs of hypothermia. And he knew, with a certainty that settled like a block of ice in his gut, that this little girl was in immediate, life-threatening danger. Her lips were blue. Her skin had a waxy, unnatural pallor. She was shivering, but it was a fine, almost imperceptible tremor, the kind that comes just before the body gives up and stops trying to warm itself. He knelt down, careful to keep some distance. "Hey there, little one. My name is Derek. Are you okay?" She just stared at him, her gaze fixed on the Iron Sentinels patch on his leather vest. A skull with paramedic shears crossed behind it. Below it, a rocker read, "First in, last out." She finally spoke, her voice a tiny, raspy whisper, barely audible over the wind. "It's cold." "I know it is, sweetheart. I know." He slowly unzipped his heavy leather jacket, the one lined with sheepskin that kept him warm at 80 miles an hour. "Can I put my jacket around you? It's very warm." She gave a small, jerky nod. He moved forward, wrapping the massive jacket around her small frame. It swallowed her whole, the leather smelling of road dust and engine oil. He gently scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing, a little bird of hollow bones. Her feet were like blocks of ice against his side, and he could feel the violent shivering start to rack her body now that she was in the warmth of his arms. As he carried her toward his bike, he asked the question that was burning in his mind. "Where are your mom and dad?" Her answer chilled him more than the wind. "They told me to go for a walk. They said not to come back until I learned my lesson." Stitch's jaw tightened so hard he felt a muscle pop. He gently sat her on the passenger seat of his bike, making sure she was bundled deep inside his jacket. He pulled out his phone, his fingers clumsy with cold and rage. He looked at her, her small face peeking out from the collar of his jacket. "Did you try to ask anyone else for help? Did you wave at the cars?" She nodded, a tear finally escaping and freezing on her cheek. "I tried." A lady in a red car slowed down. I pointed at my feet, but she shook her head and drove away. The trucks just made loud noises at me. They just kept going. Nobody stopped. The relief that washed over her face when she looked at him was devastating. "But you did. You stopped." Those words hit Stitch like a physical blow. The crushing weight of a world that didn't stop, that just swerved and honked and kept going. He had to force the words out, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. "I'll always stop. I promise you." "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered. "I'm 7. "Okay, Lily. I'm going to make a couple of calls and get you somewhere warm and safe. You just stay right here and try to get warm." He believed her, instantly, utterly. In his line of work, he'd learned a cardinal rule. Children rarely lie about being hurt or scared. They might exaggerate, they might get confused, but the core of their fear is almost always real. The story of being told to go for a walk barefoot in freezing weather wasn't a child's fantasy. It was a monster's command. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that the most important thing we can do is simply to stop, to pay attention, to believe the small voices that the world is trying to drown out. No matter where you are in the world, a moment of your time can be the difference between life and death. Stitch's first call was to 911. He gave his location, the eastbound mile marker on I-80, and a concise, professional assessment of the child's condition. Probable moderate to severe hypothermia, frostbite to the feet, conscious but lethargic. He requested an ambulance and state patrol immediately. He stressed the urgency, his old paramedic authority cutting through the dispatcher's standard questions. His second call was to Axel, the president of the Iron Sentinels. The call was answered on the first ring. "Axel, it's Stitch. What's your 20, brother? You sound wrong. I'm on I-80 eastbound, mile marker 114. I've got a situation. A little girl, maybe 7 years old. Found her walking on the shoulder, barefoot." A heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then Axel's voice, hard as steel. "Barefoot?" "Yeah, hypothermic. Cops and an ambulance are on the way, but the nearest town is a good 30 minutes out. I need backup. I need a wall. The trucks are flying by here, and I don't like how close they're getting. How many do you need?" "Everyone you can get. Now. Say no more. We're rolling. 20 minutes. Hold tight." The call ended. Stitch knew what was happening now. A series of texts would be flying out to every member of the Laramie chapter. A simple message. "Stitch needs us. Mile marker 114. Now." Men would be dropping tools, walking away from jobs, leaving half-eaten lunches on tables. They would be throwing on their cuts, firing up their bikes, and riding. No questions asked. That was the code. He turned back to Lily. She was watching him, her eyes wide. He gave her a reassuring smile, though he felt anything but calm. "Help is on the way, Lily. Lots of help. My friends are coming. They're good guys, and they're going to help us keep you safe." She huddled deeper into his jacket. "Will they have loud bikes too?" He chuckled, the sound rough. "The loudest, kiddo." "Good," she whispered, "so the monsters will hear them coming." Stitch's blood ran cold. He knelt in front of her again. "What monsters, Lily?" "The ones at the house. My aunt and her boyfriend. They get mad when I'm too loud." or when I'm hungry. His rage was a living thing now, a hot fire in his chest. He wanted to find that house and burn it to the ground, but he pushed it down. His focus had to be on her. He carefully took one of her feet in his hand. It was dangerously white and hard to the touch. He knew he couldn't rub it. That would cause more damage. All he could do was keep her bundled and prevent any further heat loss. He took off his thick riding gloves and gently placed his warm hands over her frozen feet, just letting his body heat transfer. She winced, a tiny whimper escaping her lips. "I know it hurts, Lily. That's the feeling coming back. It's a good sign. Just hang in there." He started talking to her, keeping his voice calm and steady, telling her about his motorcycle, about the funny names his friends had, like Bear and Grinder and Preacher. He was fighting to keep her conscious, to keep her connected. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Every semi that thundered past seemed to shake the very ground, and he instinctively shielded her small body with his own. He could see her fading, her eyelids drooping. The lethargy was a dangerous sign. If you've ever witnessed something terrible and felt the crushing weight of not being believed, if you've ever been the small voice trying to speak truth to a world that wasn't listening, pause for just a moment to like and share this story. Because what happened next would prove that one person, backed by the thunder of brotherhood, can change the world for a child in need. Now back to the story. Just when Stitch was starting to fear the ambulance wouldn't make it in time, he heard it. A low, distant rumble that was different from the passing trucks. It grew steadily, a deep, guttural harmony that vibrated in his chest. It was the sound of V-twin engines, dozens of them, united in purpose. Lily's eye. She's hypothermic, told to take a walk by her aunt and boyfriend. Axel nodded, his jaw set. He turned to the other men. "You heard him. Form a perimeter. Block this lane. I want a steel wall around them. Bear, get the thermal blankets and first aid kit from your saddlebag. Ghost, you're on lookout. Let me know the second you see flashing lights." The Iron Sentinels moved with the quiet efficiency of a military unit. They positioned their heavy motorcycles diagonally, creating an impenetrable barrier that completely blocked the right lane and shoulder. They switched on their hazard lights, a constellation of flashing amber that warned oncoming traffic from a mile away. Bear, a man who looked like he could wrestle a grizzly and win, approached with a foil thermal blanket and a first aid kit. He moved with a gentleness that belied his size, his eyes soft with concern as he looked at Lily. Stitch and Bear worked together, carefully wrapping Lily in the thermal blanket under the jacket, creating a cocoon of warmth. The other bikers stood guard, their broad backs to the child, facing the traffic, a silent, intimidating line of guardians. They had created a sanctuary of safety on the side of a cold, indifferent highway. Soon, the wail of a siren cut through the air. A Wyoming State Patrol cruiser arrived first, followed closely by an ambulance. A trooper, a young man named Officer Evans, stepped out of his car, his expression a mixture of caution and confusion, at the wall of bikers. Axel met him halfway. "Officer, my name is Axel Rourke. I'm president of the Iron Sentinels MC. One of my men, Derek Morrison, found the child. He's a retired paramedic. He's with her now." Evans's eyes flickered over the patches, the leather, the sheer imposing presence of the men. But he saw the professionalism in Axel's demeanor. He nodded and walked over to Stitch. The paramedics took over immediately, their movements swift and sure. They got Lily onto a gurney, wrapping her in heated blankets, starting an IV. Stitch gave them a quick, concise report, all paramedic, no biker. Vital signs, estimated exposure time, condition of her extremities. As they were loading her into the ambulance, Lily looked back, her eyes searching for Stitch. He moved to the door. "You're going to be okay, Lily. These people are going to get you all warmed up. Will you come?" Her voice was small, terrified. "I'll be right behind you," he promised. "My friends and I have to take care of something first, but I will see you at the hospital. I promise." She nodded, seeming to relax at his word. The doors closed, and the ambulance pulled away, its siren screaming into the wind. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Bike Diaries, because what happened next would prove that justice doesn't always wait for a warrant when brotherhood is on the case. Hit that hype button, and if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Now, back to the story. Stitch turned to Officer Evans, his face a cold mask of fury. "She said she came from a house not too far from here. Back west. She said she walked for a long time. There was a blue mailbox," she said. That's all she knew. Evans was writing in his notepad. A blue mailbox. That's not much to go on. Stitch looked at Axel. Axel looked at the 10 other men standing by their bikes. "We'll find it. We can spread out. Cover every side road for the next 10 miles. Evans hesitated. "I can't officially authorize a civilian search." Axel cut him off, his voice respectful but firm. "With all due respect, officer, you can't stop us from going for a ride. We'll be on public roads. If one of us happens to spot a house with a blue mailbox, we'll call you with the location. We won't engage. We'll just observe." The trooper looked at the 12 determined faces, at the disciplined way they had secured the scene, and made a decision. He gave a curt nod. "Keep your radios on. My cell is on the card I gave you. Call me directly. I'll follow behind." The iron sentinels mounted up. The sound of 12 Harleys roaring to life was a declaration of war. They split into pairs, peeling off to search the access roads and dirt tracks that spiderwebbed off the interstate. Stitch and Axel rode together. Every farmhouse, every trailer, every shack they passed, their eyes scanned for one thing: a blue mailbox. It was Stitch who saw it, 20 minutes later, down a long, muddy driveway 2 miles off the highway. The house was a wreck, a dilapidated single-wide trailer with a sagging porch and garbage strewn across the yard, and at the end of the drive, leaning precariously to one side, was a faded but unmistakably blue mailbox. Stitch pulled over, holding up a hand. Axel stopped beside him. Stitch got on the radio to the other bikers, then called Officer Evans. "We found it. 347 Willow Creek Road. Stand by." Within 10 minutes, the other sentinels had converged, parking their bikes 100 yards down the road, out of sight of the trailer. They waited, a silent, patient force. When Officer Evans's cruiser pulled up, followed by a second unit, Stitch and Axel met him. "That's the one," Stitch said, his voice flat. Evans and the other officer walked up the drive and knocked on the flimsy door. After a moment, it opened, and a bleary-eyed woman in a dirty bathrobe peered out. A man with track marks on his arms appeared behind her. The confrontation was brief. The officers' voices were low, but Stitch could hear the couple's loud, slurred denials. They were lying, claiming Lily had run off, that she was a problem child, always looking for attention. From the road, Stitch could see through the grimy front window of the trailer. He saw a small, filthy mattress on the floor in a corner. There was no blanket, just a thin, stained sheet. That was where Lily slept. The rage he'd been suppressing boiled over. He started walking toward the house. Axel put a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Not yet, brother. Let the law handle it. Our turn comes later." After 15 minutes of questioning, Officer Evans emerged with the couple in handcuffs. They were being arrested for child endangerment and neglect. As they were being placed in the cruisers, the woman looked over and saw the line of bikers watching from the road. Her face, already a mask of defiance, twisted into a snarl. "What are you freaks looking at?" Bear, The gentle giant took a single step forward, his shadow falling over her. His voice was a low growl, more powerful than any shout. "We're the ones who stopped." The cruisers pulled away, leaving a cloud of dust and silence. The house was now a crime scene. The sentinels stayed until Child Protective Services arrived, ensuring the scene remained secure. Their job there was done. Now, Stitch had a promise to keep. The ride to the hospital in Laramie was a somber one. The 12 bikers rode in a tight protective formation, a funeral procession for a childhood that had been stolen. When they arrived at the hospital, they didn't go inside. They parked their bikes in a neat line in the parking lot and stood waiting. They were a strange sight in the sterile environment of a hospital, a dozen large men in leather vests, saying nothing, just keeping vigil. 4 hours later, a car sped into the parking lot and screeched to a halt. A woman jumped out, her face etched with panic and exhaustion. This was Lily's grandmother, Maria Sanchez. She had been fighting for custody of Lily for over a year, trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare. The police had finally reached her in Cheyenne, where she worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. She ran toward the emergency room entrance, then stopped, her eyes wide as she saw the intimidating line of bikers. Axel stepped forward. "Ma'am, are you here for Lily?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes. Is she okay?" "She's okay," Axel said gently. "She's warm, and she's safe, and she's a fighter. One of our brothers found her." Maria Sanchez looked at the faces of these rough-looking men, and for the first time she saw them not as a threat, but as what they were, guardians. She burst into sobs, a torrent of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she wept. "Oh God, thank you." Stitch stepped out from the back of the group. "Ma'am, I'm Derek. I'm the one who found her." She rushed to him, throwing her arms around his waist and burying her face in his leather vest. "How can I ever thank you? You saved my baby. You saved her life." Stitch just patted her back, his own throat tight. All he could say was, "Go be with her. She needs her grandma." The reunion inside was one the nurses would talk about for years. When Lily saw her grandmother, she let out a cry that was part pain, part pure joy. Maria scooped her up, holding her tight, rocking her back and forth, whispering in Spanish, her tears soaking into Lily's hospital gown. The whole world had shrunk to that one small, safe embrace. Justice had been served on the side of the road, and now healing could begin. Later that evening, after Lily was settled in a room and her grandmother had not left her side, Stitch went up to see her. He knocked softly on the door. Maria opened it, her eyes red but shining with gratitude. "Come in," she whispered. "She's been asking for you." Lily was propped up in bed, her feet heavily bandaged, but her color was back, and her eyes were bright. When she saw Stitch, a huge smile lit up her face. "Stitch, you came. You kept your promise." He walked over to the bed. "I told you I would. How are you feeling, kiddo?" "Warm," she said simply. "It's nice to be warm." She looked at him, her expression serious. "You believed me." "Of course I did," he said, his voice a little rough. "Brave girls like you always tell the truth." He reached into the pocket of his vest and pulled something out. It was a small, circular patch, an exact replica of the large iron sentinel's patch on his back, but only about an inch in diameter. "This is for you," he said, placing it in her small hand. "It means you're one of us now. It means you've always got family watching out for you. If you ever need anything, ever, you have your grandma tell one of us. We'll be there." Lily clutched the patch in her hand like it was the most precious treasure in the world. She looked from the patch to his face. "Thank you for stopping, Stitch." He reached out and gently ruffled her hair. "Always, Lily. For you, always. Thank you for watching this story about Lily and Derek Stitch Morrison of the Iron Sentinels MC. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most heroic act is simply to pull over, to listen, and to believe a child when they say they're in trouble. Our world moves fast, but our humanity is found in the moments we choose to slow down for someone in need. If you or someone you know needs help, there are resources available to protect the most vulnerable among us. Please, subscribe to Bike Diaries, hit that hype button, and check out our membership link below. Share this with everyone who needs to remember that we are all each other's keepers. Tell us in the comments, in a world that often looks away, have you ever been the person who stopped? 1 year later. The sun was warm on the back deck of a small, neat house in Cheyenne. The sound of children's laughter filled the air. It was Lily's 8th birthday party. The yard was full of balloons and kids from her 2nd grade class. She was running and playing, her feet, now fully healed with only faint scarring, clad in bright pink sneakers. She was a different child, happy, confident, and safe. A deep rumble echoed down the street. Lily's head popped up, a huge grin spreading across her face. "They're here!" 12 motorcycles pulled up in front of the house. Stitch was in the lead. The men of the Iron Sentinels dismounted, carrying clumsily wrapped presents. They had become a fixture in Lily's new life. They were her uncles, a dozen burly, leather-clad guardian angels. They'd helped Maria move, fixed her car, and made sure she and Lily never wanted for anything. Stitch walked onto the deck, and Lily launched herself into his arms. He swung her around, laughing. "Happy birthday, kiddo!" He set her down, and she proudly pointed to the denim jacket she was wearing. Sewn perfectly over the heart was the small, circular patch he had given her in the hospital. "I wear it every day," she said, "so I remember I'm safe." The story of Lily on the highway became a legend within the Iron Sentinels MC. It was a story they told new prospects, a lesson in what their patch truly stood for. It wasn't about being tough, it was about being the wall that stood between the innocent and the dark. It was proof that one man, paying attention on a cold day, could hear a whisper for help above the roar of the world. And for Derek Stitch Morrison, it was the single most important stitch he had ever made, mending a life that was torn and frayed, and creating a bond of family, forged not in blood, but in the promise to always, always stop.